Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I finished what is probably one of the most important books of the year, and that is called The End of Reality: How Four Billionaires Are Selling a Fantasy Future of the Metaverse, Mars, and Crypto by Jonathan Taplin. The title of the book is very accurate, and it basically tells the story about four billionaires, which are Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Mark Anderson, and Peter Thiel, who are trying to basically create these new technologies. But the author is very critical of them, and that is something that I'm really excited to talk about because it is something I also do in my channel, Tomorrow Matters, which is talk about these technologies and the ways they can go right, but also the many different ways that they can go wrong. So, like the title of the book says, it focuses on each billionaire with a perspective with one of the different four technologies. For example, Elon Musk is paired with his fantasy of going to Mars, of basically populating the planet, and he talks about the many ways this can be unfeasible. And it is very convincing in several parts. I feel like Jonathan Taplin does a very good job with this. Also, Mark Zuckerberg with the metaverse, I feel like he makes a very powerful case about like the many ways this can go wrong, and that is something I also talked about myself in a different video I made called "Why the Metaverse Will Be a Mental Health Disaster." And it is also interesting how many of the things that I talked about in that video are also talked in the book. For example, the mental health issues, the way it's going to shape a lot of our democracy, a lot of society. He talks a lot about that in the book, and he also does it through a political lens that it remains throughout the entire book. And then with Mark Anderson, he takes on the topic of cryptocurrencies and NFTs, which, like as many people saw, were a complete disaster over the last 2 years. I feel like they crashed, and then everybody forgot about them. But he also tells like the many downfalls of cryptocurrency. For example, the energy usage, the basically the pump and dump schemes, and how it shapes a lot of the economy in negative ways. Like apart from the benefits of it, I feel like he's very convincing in the ways he like relates to these topics, and he explains like the many ways it went wrong and why like these billionaires are basically pushing a lot of ideas into society that people think are going to take off, and in the end they don't. Finally, he also talks about the topic of transhumanism, which is a topic that for me is one of the most important ones to focus on in the next couple years, and he focuses on Peter Thiel, who he explains Thiel is trying to find ways in order to extend aging and how these technologies can create inequality between people. Something I also talked in my video about transhumanism, and also like the many ways that it can go wrong. But he also doesn't focus too much on the negatives. That is something that is important throughout the course of the book. He also like tells some of the positives of these technologies, but primarily focusing on the criticisms, which I think is very important. I feel like the book has many positives. It covers a very important topic, but at the same time, I feel like he takes some absolutist like issues. For example, he like Taplin is not very fond of video games either, as is evidenced in several areas. And a lot of the arguments he makes for the metaverse, I feel like kind of relate to that moral panic with video games that happened a couple years ago. He references that in a couple pages. Also, he takes some absolutist stances on other like political topics. I feel like the book becomes too political at times, but not too much that it's too big of a deal. I feel like the way he talks about these topics makes it worth it, and it just made me think a lot. And it is a book that I highly recommend because of the way he talks about it. I don't agree with everything he says, but at the end of the day, I think it's a great book, and I really recommend it. So if you need a read that is also going to make you scared in a lot of parts because it covers some really scary topics that relate to the future and the ways it can go wrong, go read this one. So it is The End of Reality by Jonathan Taplin.